Hello and welcome. This is our second MCU and Comics video that we're going to put up. It's where I discuss the latest article posted on the MCU and Comics. It's on Blogspot. A link to that article will be in the description, along with timestamps for topics. So for those of you whose time is short, or you're just interested in very specific things, you can just jump to those as opposed to watching the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is go through the main points of the article. However, I won't be doing my episode 8 breakdown of WandaVision. It's quite involved, and I know from having done a test run of this, it takes our runtime it's very long. So I think I'm going to hold off on that, and we'll either do it. I think we'll probably do it just before episode 9 drops. So I kind of go through what I thought of episode 8. And yeah, I think I'll save the supposed leaks and whatnot for episode 9 for then as well. So we'd be ballparking Thursday for that because it's all related. So I think I'll just keep all that stuff together and we'll go from there. So with that said, we'll get started with everything that isn't WandaVision. And our first order of business comes from Scooper Daniel RPK. I'm actually planning on putting out a video going through who the Scoopers are, reliability, that sort of thing. Nothing too involved. We don't want to get too into the weeds. I know for some people that's not particularly interesting, but at least it can serve as sort of a shorthand in case you're wondering who I'm referring to whenever these people come up. For Daniel, briefly, he's been around for a while. He started off as a DC scooper, although now he still does both, but he's more Marvel than he is DC. And he has, among the scoopers, he's got the largest Patreon, although it's not the sort of thing you could live off of, to give you a ballpark. I think the last time I checked, he had about 430 patrons. So the cut from Patreon itself, that's still less than he would make working part-time minimum wage. So, and he also has to pay for, unless his parents do it, he also has to pay for his Production Weekly subscription, which is quite expensive. And that dovetails into where his information comes from. A lot of it, all the casting stuff that he puts out, or anything related to that, comes from Production Weekly, which is a good source, but it's not inside info for him. He's simply paying a subscription to something that is expensive. But you or I, if we had, the wherewithal and the money, could also pay for that. Just word to the wise. So to his information. So what he put out was that we will see the Illuminati from another reality, another part of the multiverse, in Doctor Strange 2. So what are the Illuminati? The Illuminati are, after my time in comics, but they've been around for a while, and they're basically a collection of not the most powerful, but some of the bigger names of Marvel Comics heroes. So people like Iron Man, Captain America, Namor, Black Bolt, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Reed Richards, that sort of thing. The membership in it is varied, but in essence, it's sort of like a brain trust that gets together to deal with larger threats. That's the idea anyway. So when this came out from Daniel, it was a familiar idea because back in January of 2020, Mikey Sutton, who was a completely different scooper, he has a little bit more complicated backstory, so I won't give you a short version of that. At any rate, he put out this exact same idea back in January. He had, I think, one or two slightly different details, but the principle was the same. So this is not a new idea from Daniel, or in general, but it is new from Daniel. And when I saw this, I wondered if, assuming there's some truth behind this, if this is why Chris Evans is being talked to now to return. When the news came out of him negotiating for more Marvel material, I realized, it was pretty obvious to me that it had to be for something that was filming soon. Otherwise, there was no urgency. There was no point in doing it now. And Doctor Strange 2 is filming right now. So if you want him in a multi-universe Illuminati, now is the time to negotiate. And I thought that the reason that the news of that came out was they realized Evans would be seen on set. It would get spoiled by fans if they didn't come out with it. So Marvel let it go, come out that Evans was returning. And that way, if he is spotted, it's not a spoiler. So now keep in mind that is speculation on top of speculation. So we don't know that the Illuminati is coming. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Two scoopers say it is. There's some plausibility there. And we certainly don't know if Evans being brought back is connected with that. That's just my supposition, but food for thought. Next order of business, Shang-Chi. Lego set leak. Unfortunately, this didn't have any new details or information that hasn't come out before. All this really is, I guess, it's not even confirmation because all the stuff in there was confirmed. So we're just seeing some of the merchandise come out. Marvel went in and scrubbed this, although I think you can still find photos of it if you're really excited about Lego. Yeah, it's other than that, Shang-Chi is a weird project to me. The Scooper community, for whatever reason, really likes Shang-Chi. But Shang-Chi is a very obscure Marvel character. He comes out of the 70s. He's a Bruce Lee ripoff. And he was popular at the time when martial arts in that style was popular, where you had the David Carradine show. I'm blanking on the name. Oh, it's all right. Most of you don't remember stuff from the 70s anyway. But it was capitalizing on that, and then it died off. Between the various sort of martial artists who had their own comic, Iron Fist was ultimately more popular than Shang-Chi. I think it's because Iron Fist was he was a funnier character, and he also had a mystical element to him. When Shang-Chi was sort of re-envisioned later, they kind of gave him mystical elements as well to help spice him up, but it hasn't made him popular. So whenever you see coverage of Shang-Chi, you'll see a lot of excitement from the people who are covering him, but you won't see that reflected in the public. So Marvel hasn't started their big publicity for it yet. But one of the things that they'll have to do is work hard on that, because right now the temperature doesn't go up for Shang-Chi. Just food for thought. And we'll get to something Shang-Chi connected in a second. Next up, we had a little bit of Miss Marvel news. Pierre Chanlot, I don't know why that name makes me stumble, but anyway. He did some Instagram sleuthing and discovered that actress Alicia Rayner is playing a role in the show. He guesses it's a villain, possibly the inventor. Now, for me, I can't add too much to this. Miss Marvel Kamala Khan is not something I've ever read. All the information that's come out about the show is all very insular to her IP. So that if you haven't read her comic, a lot of these characters are characters you've never seen before. I'm also unfamiliar with the actress, so I don't have a strong opinion about whether it's a good choice or not, and I don't know who she'd be playing. That show is going to be a tough sell for me. It looks like a young adult fare, like something aimed at teens or tweens, and I haven't seen anything to draw in your casual adult audience. And I wonder if it's going to have the same problems that Ant-Man did, where by specifically going for a family-friendly comedy, it lost a lot of casual Marvel fans, or not so casual Marvel fans. You can see that in the box office. The sequel in particular, which isn't nearly as good a movie as the first film, but it is, if you look at the box office for Ant-Man and the Wasp, it is an anomaly amongst all the other Marvel material around it, which all was incredibly successful. So I do feel like if they wind up tonally going for something that is teen oriented, I feel like that's a show that quite a few Marvel fans will sit out. We'll have to see though. It's too early. You know, we haven't seen anything from it, so maybe my concerns are all for naught. Next up, Captain Marvel 2. So Daniel again. and these are casting calls from Production Weekly. He never lists them that way, but that's what they are. And there were 3 items that I included. I didn't include the whole thing because often when he puts out these lists, it includes stuff that's already well known and understood. So like who the director is and what the movie title is and that sort of thing. And that's, you can get that on Wikipedia. It's not that interesting. So the first one was an actress in a supporting villain role who had already been announced before he let this out. So that we can skip over. But the second one is a supporting male role. It doesn't say villain, so we'll have to assume this is an ally. And so the age range is 20s to 30s, and the prototypes to me are very funny. One is Timothée Chalamet, who I believe is in the Dune. Is it a show or a movie? I actually can't remember. I think it's a movie. Anyway, and Michael B. Jordan. And when I saw this, I thought it's difficult to imagine 2 more different looking actors than Chalamet and Jordan. You've got a skinny French guy who's 25, and you have a ripped African-American dude who's 34. To me, what that suggests is there isn't a strong idea for the character, that they will not be playing a major Marvel character. It'll be someone from the comics, but nobody really relevant. And that suggests to me that it's kind of a throwaway role. There'll be a supporting character in the film and maybe not completely disappear, but you're only going to see them in a very specific sort of context after that. The other one, the third listing, was literally called Red Herring Role. A cameo, and they put the prototype Clive Owen, so I guess that's older white dude. This sort of thing is not unique, having a character show up and they're not that important. A lot of films have done it. I don't think it's particularly effective most of the time, though. Typically, these things are either obvious or it just comes out that the character is trivial. And once you know the character's trivial, no one cares. So this is an interesting tactic. I suspect the reason they're doing something like this is the popular support for Captain Marvel is pretty low. So the film made $1 billion, and it's not a terrible film. It'll be on the lower end of Marvel origin films, but it's certainly not as bad as The Incredible Hulk, for example, which is boring. That is a boring movie to sit through. But like I said, it's soft, and it's soft because the way they've done Brie Larson's Carol Danvers is they don't really give the audience anything to work with. She's a badass, I guess. But can you be a badass when nothing threatens you? She has kind of the Superman problem in terms of her power set, but she doesn't have any flaws. And you can get away with a flawless character if they have attachments that impact their decisions and choices and really challenge them. But Carol doesn't have that either. Her friend, Maria Rambeau, is dead. And that's really her only friend that we see in her film. Nick Fury is alive, but Sam Jackson's 1,000 years old. And how far can you push that? And who else did she meet? Coulson. Coulson's dead too. So where do you tug the heartstrings? Because all the Kree are her enemies. So you just kind of have a mess of a character. So I think this kind of thing, a fake out or whatever, is just something to add hype to an IP. I think they're gonna have a hard time getting some people to show up to. That's part of the reason I think we're getting a build up to it that includes Secret Invasion and Miss Marvel. They're all trying to add some oomph to a weaker IP. You see this with Ant-Man Quantumania too. Marvel's well aware that neither of the Ant-Man films performed particularly well. The first Ant-Man did well after it came out, in terms of like DVD sales and stuff like that. But the secondary market isn't that important anymore, not in the same way. And Ant-Man 2 isn't as good a film. So you can see they're trying to pump that up. Most people think the Young Avengers will appear in Ant-Man, and while I personally couldn't care less about the Young Avengers at all, it adds a little bit of zip to something that isn't quite working the way they'd like. So that long digression is, I think that's why you're getting this sort of thing happening, a red herring roll. But I honestly think it's not going to do anything. If you want to get people to show up excited for Captain Marvel 2, you need a character in there that people are going to be excited about. And I don't think that's going to happen. Because there's just not enough screen time. You've got Kamala Khan in there, you've got Monica Rambeau in there. You're starting to eat through screen time for characters. So I think they're kind of stuck, and they're going to have to rely on good writing to pull people back in. And it's doable. It's doable. Carol Danvers can be an interesting character. I would have thrown Rogue at her. I would have done the Rogue origin where she loses her powers. Because then you can develop the character. Then she has something to overcome. But as far as we know, that's not happening. Cross our fingers, I guess. But anyway, moving on. The Eternals. So as I predicted, there has been no response at all to Casey Walsh's revelation about Gemma Chan being a bit of a drama queen on set, and Marvel wanting to move away from her. That doesn't mean we can take that as confirmed. It does mean there's snow moving equipment out there that you might be able to hear. Just that we haven't had a harsh reaction to it. Sometimes people who put this stuff out get condemned. We haven't had denials. We haven't had anything. Just silence. To me, at least, that makes it more credible. But grains of salt. And I think we won't find out for sure for a long time after, if ever. Oh, that's lovely. Hopefully that's not as loud for you as it is for me. That's pretty damn loud. The other bit of Eternals news, and this isn't new, but I was just reminded of it because of Walsh's story, is that about a year ago, it's actually back in April, sounds like an aircraft landing, doesn't it? Daniel reported that the Eternals was rushed into production. It wasn't a complete script. There weren't fully finished costumes for Black Knight in particular. This did the rounds. It got coverage. And then went away. But I mean, how much can you discuss it? But it does suggest that there's some drama around this film that you don't normally see with Marvel. Doesn't mean it won't be a great movie. It could be. It's just something to keep in mind about it. All right, so moving on to our next bit of news. And I actually think I'm going to have to pause because that is very loud. Sorry about that.